I love that quote of the day, the internet's quite big. So I picked this story up and just thought it was a fantastic and natural way in which the analog becomes digital and suddenly represents a world that maybe people didn't even know existed. I spoke to a few people, both in Seattle and various conferences and through my PhD work, and there is this really interesting cultural disconnect. And talking to Rachel in particular, and Keith, it seems that there is in Seattle this principle that you are a musician first and you play for a band second. In the UK, it seems, and I'm happy to be stand corrected, that you tend to play for a band. And that's who you play for. You tour around with your band. There's less of a loosey-goosey feel to the way that you operate. So in Seattle, there is a very common principle that you would play maybe one official gig, but you'd sort of expect to do 2 or 3 house gigs. Someone opens their house, you go, you play, you get fed, you might even sleep over, and you suddenly acquire this brand new audience of people who've seen you, who've been physically close to you, and who can then be evangelists on your behalf if they like what they see. I don't think that happens in Newcastle. Certainly not noticed it. If it does, then I'd be really interested to talk to people, because that sort of cultural disconnect made me think, well, is this an East Coast, West Coast thing? Is it a Geordie Seattle thing, or maybe it's just me, maybe I'm wrong. So I'd be really interested to investigate that a little bit further. It also made me think about digging a little bit deeper into this principle of the artist as a cultural representative of their city. I was very impressed that even in these economically straitened times, I'm sick of saying it, but it's true, that the city of Seattle was prepared to fund, they funded Rachel to come over here, and we got some funding from the conference as well, which is great. But the mayor's office put their hand in the pocket first, and that sign of how important the cultural life of a city and of a region is, and how important it is that those stories are told more broadly, was, I thought, extremely impressive. And sort of further, deeper thinking comes back to this principle of these strong and weak ties. This is the picture that comes from Granovetter's work, so the dotted ties are weak ties and the solid ties are strong ties. But where there is a strong tie between somebody that knows somebody really well and then these weak ties where they can be far more informative, there are occasionally absent ties which something like Seattle Band Map, I believe, could actually fill them in. So I see the map not just as a mirror into what has happened in the past and a snapshot of what's happening in the future, but also as something that could possibly inspire new relationships that simply otherwise wouldn't happen because nobody would know what they didn't know. Whereas the map can show you, well, hang on a sec, here's half a dozen people I've played with, and they've all played with this guy, but I didn't know he existed. So it's as an inspiration, as much as a reflection, as much of a snapshot of current activity, and that, to me, is really, really interesting. As an academic, if it can work for music, can it work for science? Can it work for film? Can it work for games? Can it work for the academic environment? Now, we're really bad at talking to each other, and maybe if we knew more about who was doing what, other than the informal networks that we build within the little silos that we work in, could that be something that could inspire new, innovative mechanisms? Oh, this is my PhD, this is really dull, sorry, I'll skip that. So what I'm looking at creating is a series of papers around these various elements, the geographic, the theoretical, the cultural contexts of something like Seattle Band Map, and how it might or might not expand into different industry sectors, different geographic sectors, how it might act as, in its own right, an ambassador for the city of Seattle into different regions and different areas. I'm looking at the creation of this virtual tie, the inspiration for new relationships that might not otherwise happen. I'm going to hand you over to Rachel. We're skipping through this a little bit because I'm conscious that a lot of people are going slow, and I wanted to speed things up a bit and give people a chance to argue with me if they want to, and with Rachel, to talk a little bit about the background of the map, wrap things up, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A.
So one of the things, like you were mentioning, that was most exciting to me to discover was the fact that I was connected through mutual acquaintances to people that I had no idea I was connected to. Like my band, I could connect to like really famous bands like Pearl Jam or Nirvana or hip-hop bands that I hadn't even seen play before, but through shared collaborations we had a shared connection. So I'm very curious to find out more about what that can do. Joanna got some quotes from the director of the Office of Film and Music. One of the things that we really enjoyed when we were showing the map, and maybe you guys experienced it, you saw it last night in public at art galleries, was that people would gather around it and it would kind of spark people to share stories, and someone would say, oh, I remember seeing that band at the Ver Project, and then someone else would be like, yeah, they were playing with so-and-so in 1990, and so people would see these connections, and then it would spark connections between them, and they remember, oh, they saw the same thing at the same time, or they had the same friends, or they had the same experiences. So it was really like, it became like a gathering point. And that's kind of what James Keeblos found too. It brought back a lot of memories, he says. Seattle's definitely been behind promoting itself as a musical city, and so that it helped them meet that mission. I've got some printouts on it if you guys want to see kind of more about their mission. But so I'm definitely interested in finding out what possible uses for this map could be, how it could benefit musicians. I think, is there a way that it can help bands who are trying to book tours? Is there a way it can help bands sell albums, or I'm not sure. So I'd love to talk to you guys after this as how it could be beneficial, but I'm looking into the future to expanding it beyond Seattle, because already in making this map, there's already so many connections, like the local band Modest Mouse is connected to the Smiths. So already there's a Seattle UK connection, and then through the Smiths there's connections to a ton of UK bands. Can a UK band map be made in the same way? Can that connect to one in Paris? Can that connect to one in New York? Can there be a global band map? If so, what does that show about artistic collaborations? So I'm definitely interested in updating the map, expanding it to different cities, different genres, different decades, and then seeing how it can be applied, hopefully, to help be more than interesting, but actually be beneficial in one way or another.